when PTM emerged, the Pakistani state said, oh, that policy of using Pashtuns or Pashtun lands as a kind of a ground for its strategic games in Afghanistan or somewhere else is not going to play out. So after that, they have tried very hard and they have used every weapon in their arsenal to suppress PTM.
Hi, you've tuned into State of South Asia, a podcast from Himal South Asian, where we have the best minds on the region to unpack crucial issues affecting our politics, cultures, environments, and societies. I'm your host, Nayantara Narayanan. On the 6th of October, the Pakistan government announced a ban on the Pashtun Tahafuz Movement, or PTM. The movement is a social movement for the rights of and justice for Pashtuns, the ethnic community that lives largely in Pakistan's northwest province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The PTM's main grievances are alleged human rights violations by Pakistan's military, including killings and enforced disappearances of civilians, lack of protection by the state from violence by the Tehreek-e-Taliban or the Pakistani Taliban, and more regular harassment, such as having security checkpoints in the province that interrupt normal life and movement. The ban was widely decried by the international community. Just 2 days after the move, Amnesty International called on Pakistan to immediately revoke the ban and, I quote, stop its witch hunt on dissenting groups on the basis of their ethnicity. Himal contributor Hurmat Shah writes that the circular and ensuing crackdown on PTM activists and supporters was a bid to prevent the PTM from holding a community-wide consultation called a jirga on the future path of Pashtuns and Pashtun activism. The outcry in Pakistan was even louder, especially when police opened fire on a crowd of jirga organizers and supporters, killing 3 people. Finally, under pressure, the government agreed to temporarily rescind the ban and the jirga was held. The PTM put forward a 22-point resolution that included calls to demilitarize Pashtun lands. Hurmat joins me from Doha today to discuss the decades-long struggle of the Pashtuns, the run-up to the ban and the October standoff between Pashtuns and the government, and what this moment means for relations between the Pashtuns and the Pakistani state. Hurmat is a postdoctoral researcher who writes about socio-political issues, particularly on core periphery relations in Pakistan. We're recording this episode on the 25th of October. Hurmat, thank you for joining me on this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to begin by asking you what the immediate reaction in Pakistan was to the announcement of the ban of the PTM. We saw, and as I mentioned, the amnesty reaction. It was picked up by the international media. There was quite a bit of an international reaction. But tell us what the reaction inside Pakistan was.
The initial reaction of everyone, including me, was shock. What is the state going to do? Because PTM has an organization since it started in 2018. It has been able to draw out huge crowds without any political organization, without any financial backup, without promising anyone that they can come into power and do like some of the average there. But still, people from 2018 onwards, like hundreds of thousands, have been flocked to its gatherings, its protest rallies, and all that. And since then, the state has tried to suppress PTM through a lot of tactics. There have been firings on the protest rallies. There have been arbitrary detentions. There have been cases which are illegal and without any ground. But this last thing, that calling PTM a terrorist organization and banning it under the laws of terrorism, like, it was shock to everyone, and to put it in plain words, it was stupid, because PTM throughout the last 6 years has not been involved in any kind of violent act of protest. Even the protest which they have held often are far away from the city centers, not to, like, they are not blocking roads, they are not blocking highways, they are not doing anything. I mean, there has been like no accident till now where the workers or the supporters of PTM have engaged in any kind of violence. So it was the state showing its panic. I think the lost desperation of the state in stopping the way of PTM, which was not going to act, which was not going to be effective in any kind of reality. But they had this thing in their arsenal, and they wanted to, and my own analysis is that they wanted to pressurize PTM and to make people scared from joining the event which PTM was going to organize on 11th October. So I also think that the state was not kind of thinking that, oh, just by a ban they are going to ban, or they are going to do away the existence or the whole entity of PTM. It was a pressure tactic to stop PTM from holding its event, and from scaring away people to join that particular event.
There's a number of things you've mentioned in this kind of quick wrap, which we'll go into detail. But to understand the shock at this move of the Pakistan government, we really have to understand the not just the history of the PTM, but the history of the Pashtuns in Pakistan. So, as an ethnic minority, you have written about this as well, that they have experienced racism at the hands of the state and of the majority, which has become systemic discrimination and inequality in the way Pashtuns and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region has been treated. Can you kind of take us through, the main points of this history of the Pashtuns and the Pakistani state?
So when we talk about the Pashtun nation, or like the national consciousness of the Pashtun, which on the basis of which they are asking for their rights, the political rights, we have to understand that Pashtuns in Pakistan enjoy, or they face like a particular a kind of a situation which is only specific to the Pashtun as a people. Pakistan is a multi-ethnic, is a multi culture place, and Pakistan is not suppressing only the culture or the identity of Pashtuns. It is also suppressing the identity of Baloch, Sindhis, even Punjabis, the Saraikis, and so on. But why the relationship between the Pakistani state and its attitude towards the Pashtun identity is very problematic, is because of some of the geostrategic factors where the Pashtun lay. In my opinion, the Pakistani state has always tried to define itself is against the ethnic identities, it's against the ethnic culture, be that Pashtun or Baloch or Punjabis or Sindhis, but they have done so particularly against the Pashtuns. I see four reasons behind that, because Pakistan see Pashtun is the major threat in the way that they don't see any other ethnicity. First is the geographical area which the Pashtuns occupy. They are spread over a larger geographical area on all the border with Afghanistan, and then a sizable portion in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in the place which was called like Pata, which is now part of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. So Pashtuns were divided into these three kind of geographical areas. It was very on a largest strip, and it kind of fit in directly into the mainland or the mainstream of Pakistan. Second thing is that on the both sides of the border with Afghanistan, it is not a border. It is not been recognized by Afghanistan as a border. It is called Turan line. So the Afghanistan has stake or a claim over on these the Pashtun regions of Pakistan. The problem for the Pakistani state is complicated there, because the Pashtuns on this side, on the Pakistani side, share very cultural, linguistic, ethnic affinity with the people of Afghanistan. They belong to the same religion, mostly belong to the same sect, and they have the same language. They can understand each other perfectly well. So they have a kind of a harmony. Second, there is no historical trauma as is involved on the Pakistani and the Indian part of the Punjab. They are the same people on the Pakistani side and on the Indian side, but they don't have the same religion. And then what happened in 1947 is a big historical trauma there. Both sides of the Pashtuns in Pakistan and Afghanistan, they don't see each other as the enemies. they kind of share that cultural affiliation and kind of like solidarity. The third thing is that the composition of the Pashtun is part of the Pakistani state. Pashtun at the face very peculiar state in Pakistan. It is not that all the Pashtuns are oppressed every time and they don't have any share in the Pakistani state, or they don't have any ways of upward mobility. So Pashtuns enjoy maybe 20 to 25% stake in the army and the bureaucracy, and there are classes like particularly in the urban areas who are integrated into the idea of Pakistan and all that. But at the other hand, Pashtuns also face the brunt of the Pakistani policies when it comes to war, when it comes to jihad, when it has to send someone from the Pakistani side to fight in Kashmir, they have to recruit Pashtuns. If they have to send someone to Afghanistan, they have to recruit the Pashtuns on based on their religious sentimentalism. The fourth factor is why the Pakistani state sees Pashtuns as a major threat. Is because of the history of the national consciousness or the national identity is way stronger as compared to any other group of people in Pakistan. So this kind of provides the whole context of the particular oppression. I mean, on absolute level, Pashtuns do enjoy some perk in Pakistan. They are not as compared to the Baloch. I mean, when you talk about the people of Balochistan, they are helpless. They have been oppressed, and Pakistan see them as a non-entity. Pakistan don't even see their existence even. But the Pashtuns, on the other hand, seen as a threat. So any kind of political activism or the mobilization on part of the Pashtuns is seen as a threat to the very existence of Pakistan.
Right. And Hurmat, do tell us how it's played out for Pashtuns in terms of Pakistan and various governments under Pakistan dealing with groups like the TTP. You had written a piece for us in the beginning of last year, around February, about how Pashtuns were not willing to be pawns in the kind of game that the government and these groups were playing with each other. Take us through what has been happening there.
So it has to start from the 1980s, the Afghan jihad. When the Afghan jihad started, the training camps were made on the Pashtun lands, particularly in the region, which was FATA. Those people were brought there from Afghanistan and they were trained there. And then the Pashtuns were used based on the religious indoctrination and based on the cultural affinity that you have to fight there in Afghanistan. And because for Pashtuns, maybe it was easier to get entry into Afghanistan and merge into the helio or the environment in Afghanistan. Before that, 1980s, Pashtuns have their own history, like the political activism, and they were very strong, strongest in terms of challenging the military dictatorship of Ayub Khan and so on, and kind of presenting an alternative to the whole structure of Pakistan was an organization called National Awami Party, which was a coalition of all the ethnic or the national ethnic people of Pakistan. It was a solidarity movement and a political party of Pashtuns, Baloch, Sindhis, and even Punjabis. So it was a broad-based front. But when the Afghan Jihad started, the Pakistan was ruled by Ziaul. All the political activity was banned. All the political parties was banned. The political suppression was already on peak. So they had kind of like a free hand. They could bring people there, not only from Afghanistan, but from all over the world and train on the Pashtun lands and then send them to Afghanistan. It kind of started there, and then when the 90s, when the Afghanistan state collapsed and the Taliban took over with the again with the help of the Pakistani army and establishment. It is not some secret. The Pakistani army generals now have admitted it openly that yes, they helped the Taliban take over in the 90s. So after that, when the Afghan, so when the after the 9/11, the US invaded Afghanistan. At that time, the dual policy of Pakistan started. Pakistan was not in a position strategically, economically, or politically to challenge US or send to the US. So it became a ally of US in the war on the so-called war on terror. But it saw its stake that to kind of protect Pakistan or secure Pakistan, it has to secure Afghanistan. Pakistan strategically was not prepared to let go of Afghanistan and have a very strong independent state emerge in Afghanistan. So it continued its dual policy of being with the US, but at the same time providing safe havens for the Afghan Taliban here. Because of that policy of providing safe havens to Taliban of Afghanistan, the local Taliban emerged. It's called Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and it emerged in 2007. They said, okay, we don't want Islam only in Afghanistan, but we want Islam also in Pakistan. And the whole thing started, the bomb blasts, the massacres, and then they expanded from the bordering area with Afghanistan and into the kind of like the mainland Swat part, which is at the center of the country, which doesn't share any border with Afghanistan. So in all of this kind of dual game to sustain the Taliban of Afghanistan, Pakistan had this policy of collateral damage. They said that the Pakistani generals, the ISI, they have said it very openly that the people killed here are collateral damage. So because of in this war between the control of the Pakistan or the Pashtun parts, the Pashtun land, between the TTP and Pakistan, the main victims were the Pashtuns. 60 to 70,000 Pashtuns have been killed there in the war. So Pakistan say on the international front that Pakistan has been the biggest victim of terrorism, but the state needs to be asked what is the ethnic composition of those victims, how many bomb blasts happened in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or in the Pashtun region of Balochistan and Exparta, and how many happened in the mainland and the mainstream of Pakistan, how many who were killed were Pashtuns and how many non-Pashtuns. So this game, I mean, every person, if you ask any kid in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or on the or any other the part of the Pashtun land, they will say it is a game. That it is a that which the Pakistani state is playing with to take control of Afghanistan and so on. So I mean, like it was not a secret. It was a known fact. After the emergence of PTM, why PTM emerged in 2018? Because people have seen this violence in this war. For the first operation started in 2006 in which was Sparta. So there has been constant operation, military operation, and bomb blasts and like suicide bombings and so on these lands. And then there were on one side was the violence by the TTP militants, and the other side was the violence and the high-handedness by the Pakistani army through checkposts, through illegal searches and all that. So PTM emerged because people were frustrated. They were done with this, the strategic games of the Pakistani state. When PTM emerged, the Pakistani state said, oh, that policy of using Pashtuns or Pashtun lands as a kind of a ground for its strategic games in Afghanistan or somewhere else is not going to play out. So after that, they have tried very hard and they have used every weapon in their arsenal to suppress PTM.
Right. And here's a reminder to our listeners, you can read this piece that Hurmat wrote in February last year, which is called Pashtuns Are Not Willing to Be Pawns in Pakistan's Dangerous Game with the TTP and the Taliban in Afghanistan. You can read that and other analysis by Hurmat and our contributors on Pakistan on our website himalmag.com. Himal South Asian has the stories that you need to understand South Asia. So become a paying supporter of our in-depth, independent coverage. You can become a patron of the magazine by clicking on the link in the episode notes or by going to our website and clicking Support Himal. This will help us bring you more stories and produce more podcasts like this one. You can also sign up to our newsletters to keep up with our latest stories, events, and more. You'll see a sign up link to our newsletters also in the episode notes. Now back to our conversation with Hurmat Ali Shah. Hurmat, so the PTM is not a political organization, it is a protest movement, but one that has found enormous support and sometimes many thousands of people attend its rallies. You told us about the origins of the PTM, but how really did it become so popular and what is its importance to Pashtuns in Pakistan?
I always say that PTM is not the cause of this uprising or this insurgence in the Pashtun consciousness in Pakistan. PTM is the effect of this. So the ground realities were already there. People were fed up with what the state was doing, and when they were caught in this war between TTP and the Pakistani state, and the political parties, the conventional political parties, were not able to take that pain and that frustration of the people and make it into a part of their political agenda. I mean, we can go on and on that why what the conventional political parties was not able to do. Maybe they had some of their own shortcomings and they were barred by the state and so on. But the fact is that there was a huge gap in what people were feeling and what they were going through and what was being articulated through other political platforms. So PTM just came into being at the very right time, and it was also was not as an effect of like very particular planning. A Pashtun youth by the name of Naqeebullah, he was murdered by a police officer who was known for like fake encounters in Karachi, and that news kind of spread all over the social media. And PTM kind of not that time PTM at that time like it was Manzoor and few of his friends. So they like said that okay, to oppose this killing of Pashtuns not only in the Pashtunat but in the other in like in the urban areas in the metropolitan, we will do a long march to Islamabad, and it will start from a place in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So it is said when the march started from its initial point, there were only 18 people there. And as soon as the news spread that, oh, people are going to march to Islamabad to protest against this killing and like the wider killings of the Pashtun, people like joined from the way, and when it reached Islamabad, maybe I think in 3 4 days, it was like hundreds and thousands of people in Islamabad. And then in Islamabad, they announced a sit-in. So they were then sitting in Islamabad for more than a week, and out of that march and that sit-in, PTM emerged. So the PTM enjoys so wide support because people have nowhere else to go to articulate their frustration and their pain. The second, PTM also its continuous support, it sustained support as part of urbanization, not only of Pakistan but also of the Pashtun areas. Urbanization in some stuff like access to phones and the social media and like these new channels of information. So, will PTM ever go away through the suppression of the Pakistani state? We have to ask what PTM is. That is the most important thing to answer. Even if there is no PTM, that kind of support or that kind of like a movement, some new form of movement will emerge.
Right. You spoke about this immense pain and frustration with the many military operations that had been carried out over the years, of Pashtuns being seen by the military as collateral damage. Earlier this year, around May or June, in the middle of the year, the military announced this new operation, the Azme Ishtikam. And that was actually seen with a lot of panic by the Pashtuns. Tell us what happened there and what really was the fear among the Pashtuns at that time.
So the Pakistani state hope that if in Afghanistan Taliban are in power, so they can then force the TTP, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, through the Taliban in Afghanistan, give up arms and like cease their activities in Pakistan. Pakistan initially started to do it. Even Imran Khan, who was at that time Prime Minister of Pakistan, he said it openly that we have invited the members of TTP to come back into Pakistan, and they tried to invited them to come back to Pakistan and live with there in Pakistan, but cease their activities and all that. But all of that failed because of this kind of dual confusion on this on the part of the establishment and the security establishment. The Taliban Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan kind of got a way to regroup in the Pashtun areas. It was also the result of the policy of the state. They even said it openly that they have invited some of them to areas in Waziristan, which is Expat, and even in Swat. To this policy, PTM, and not only PTM, but every local people, like the local movements in every part, they have come out on streets against this policy. So now the state kind of think that to gain control of these Pashtun lands, which kind of, not I'm saying that they have gone out of their hands, but they cannot act and like do their activities with impunity, which they were able to do starting from 2004 onwards. So when they announced this, that we are going to have a new operation, all the people in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in other parts of Balochistan, all of them people came out on street that this war has to end. There is going to be no more strategic game because the people don't trust the Pakistani state for what they say.
Also this ban that the government announced on the 6th of October, it came after the government has tried to crack down many times on the PTM, arresting its leaders like Manzoor Pashtun. Take us through how the government has tried to suppress the movement itself before it announced this ban in the beginning of October.
So the suppression and all of this started like as soon as with the emergence of PTM. In 2018, when they held the successful rally in Islamabad, they kind of announced these marches throughout the country. So they held a very successful march in Peshawar, in all the places in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Swat, and Nu, and so on. But they even held successful marches in like Lahore and Karachi, and they got a lot of support in these two particular areas in Lahore and Karachi from the progressives and then kind of the liberal section of the society who are seeing the pain and the suffering and oppression of Pashtuns, and they joined PTM. Even when those marches were held, PTM people were like beaten up, they were arrested and so on. So I mean the history started like there was no kind of grace period that after that particular time the state started to have it take down. But in 2019, something very kind of painful happened. The two MNAs, the member of National Assembly, Ali Wazir and Hossein Dawar, who didn't run the elections on the platform of PTM, but they were affiliated with PTM and were known for their activism and with PTM. So they were attacked by their with their supporters at a checkpost in their like hometown. So out of that, like 30 to 40 people were murdered. The place is called Har Kamar. And after that, both Ali Wazir and Mohsin Daud were arrested, and they were like in prison for months. So it started from there, and then they have started to arrest Manzoor, which they did. And now even at now when we are speaking now, hundreds of PTM workers and supporters are behind bar. And not only that, what the state is using is a kind of a tool of oppressing or suppressing PTM, is kind of blocking the national identity cards and passports of the PTM workers. So I was listening to Manzoor the other day. He was saying that he doesn't have a national identity card or a passport. They both have been blocked. So I mean, the violence is not only like the regular violence, but the violence goes into the legal areas too.
As you had mentioned, and you also pointed out in a piece that you've written for Himal, that the ban on the PTM was announced just days before this big community meeting. What was expected of that meeting, and why do we think that the state was apprehensive about it?
Yeah. So this is called a jirga, which I have expanded on it also on the piece. But it is a kind of a tribal consultative process of the Pashtun, where the elders of a lack of tribe or a different tribe or the whole people, they come together to like talk on something and to decide. So it was announced by Manzoor after Kilaman, who was a Pashtun poet, and he was being killed in Islamabad under very suspicious circumstances. So after that, Manzoor announced it. The hope from the Chirga was that we are now done because PTM has now been 6 years that it's been functioning and all that, and now because of the political oppression, the whole regime in Pakistan is such that oppression has gone to the next level. Like I mean, it has increased more, and PTM was also able to find support in some the nationalist parties. So the state kind of hoped, and then the resurgence of people to kind of be so enthusiastic about it, and people were going to the place where the jirga was about to happen maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks in advance, and the state like tried to initially it thought that it's not going to anything, it is going to just go out in air, it is going to fizzle out in air and all that. But when after like a few weeks before the jirga, it realized that no, it is maybe the same level of frustration which was back in 2018, because in 5 6 years there is kind of like a tiredness. You are on streets for so long, people get like tired, and you don't know where the movement and everything is going. But the reasons are because of the resurgence of Taliban in the Pashtun areas and some of the attacks there. And like in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, all the people were kind of on the realization that what had been done in 2004 and 2006 has been going to be restarted. So people were much more enthusiastic about this event in particular. It's not that PTM has not held any events or kind of rallies before that, but they were not of such like a wider scale. So state saw that, oh, there is going something big is going on there, and after that they started to ban PTM. They started to having a crackdown on people who were coming from different areas to attend the event.
So, Hurmat, the Pakistan government has actually used its anti terror laws to implement this ban on the PTM, and it's designated the PTM as a proscribed organization. How will that actually impact the movement, do you think?
So technically speaking, in the language of law, all the activists or the leaders of PTM, when they have been sent to jail, they have been under the anti-terrorism law. So I don't think that this thing is going to have any impact, because PTM by them was always treated as a kind of an extra legal or organization, or the something whose existence was not recognized by them. So they did whatever they wanted to do with PTM. They arrested its worker. They kind of like opened fire on them, and even before this event, on 9th October, I think they opened fire on the place where the jirga was about to happen, and in that 4 people were killed. So a lot of people are seeing this move as kind of like a shock move or a stupid move, but in terms of like how PTM is going to function or work, it doesn't will have any impact on its work as an organization or its an on activism, because it was not that PTM was enjoying some rights, and now after the ban they don't have any rights. They didn't have any rights earlier, and they won't have any rights now. So for them it is same. They can say that okay, we can arrest anyone who is a sympathizer or affiliate of PTM, but it is something which they have already been doing. So the this ban for them was kind of to scare PTM into submission, and scare people away from that particular event.
So, the PTM was not scared into submission this time and it held the jirga. You have written a piece for Himal on why Pakistan's futile ban on the PTM fails to stop a major consolidation of the Pashtun struggle. The PTM put forward a 22-point resolution asking that militant groups operating in the area be made to leave in 2 months, calling for a judicial commission to investigate killings of PTM activists in the lead up to the event, calling for the reopening of border gates along the Durand Line, which is the frontier between Pakistan and Afghanistan, calling for an end to the extortion of Pashtuns and for resettlement of Pashtuns displaced by violence. I'd like to remind our listeners again to visit our website himalmag.com and read that analysis. Now, Hurmat, the Pakistan establishment has also cracked down on Baloch activists and on protests by the Tehreek-e-Insaf, which is the party of the former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who, as we all know, is in jail. How are these attempts to silence dissent? How have they been playing out?
So, I mean, these two are a bit different things. The oppression which the Baloch face, and and then the bigger oppression on dissent, in which in particular the PTI faces. So the Baloch have their own history of being at the receiving end of the state violence. They had like insurgency, the militant insurgency. The first one was 1948, then the other one was then in 60s, and then in 70s, and so on. And this insurgency started way back in uh, 2002. So I mean, it has been more than 20 years now that there has been a military operation going on against the Baloch insurgents or the Baloch separatists, and on that context, or on a that pretext, they are kind of labeling any movement or activity which call for the Baloch rights. Particularly, there have been thousands Baloch who have been disappeared in the last 20 years. And all the Baloch Yakjahti committee, which is led by inspirational Arang, she is very good. And I mean, almost all of the Baloch people and the people of different political opinions have gathered under her leadership. So the Baloch face their own long history of oppression from the state. The what the Pashtuns and the Baloch see as has having an oats like history. So yes, what PTI is facing now is something which other political parties have faced in the last 10 to 12 years. But unfortunately, those political parties are also now part of, are now have now joined hands with the army to suppress PTI, because they think that if they don't stand with the army will stand with Imran Khan, and then the same thing will happen to like them. So I mean, it is between, well, like for the political parties, like it is a cat and mouse game.
Right. So while the suppression of the Baloch activism is somewhere like what's happening with the Pashtuns, with the PTI, it is more of a political game, and anyone who's in power is going to go after the party that's not in power, right?
Yes, I mean, it in itself is a huge debate that how it is going to be solved, because the all other political parties, yes, they have to be blamed because they are part of this suppression of PTI. But the others say that if we allow PTI to come back to power, they are going to do this same thing back to them. PTI, unfortunately, they have made very clear that they will not talk to other political parties, they will talk only to the army. So for them it is, but at the same time, the crackdown and the suppression on dissent, be that like kind of the liberal religious views, or be the Baloch and Pashtun and other ethnic movements in Pakistan, it has been going on since like the inception of Pakistan.
Right. And of course, so that brings me to the question of, in this age of social media, are the government's attempts to crush dissent only making the movements more visible because it keeps it in the news, it keeps it on social media?
So ironically, they also tried to suppress the social media. There is like no a confirmation of this from the official level, but say that they have kind of bought or like installed a firewall from China, which is going doing like deep packet inspection. So which will give the Pakistani authorities the ability to kind of go inside every post and tweet and kind of ban it and highlight it. So, because I mean, it is not something officially confirmed by state or by anyone else, but these days the internet speeds in Pakistan are horrible. and then the internet is being slowed down. I mean, there has been like internet blockades. The people are not able to like attend a video call, or the state is. It also knows that when in the presence of social media, it is not able to control dissent. So I mean, it is trying, and not that it is trying. It has banned Twitter a few times. In particular zones, they also banned Facebook and so on. But because these technologies are such that which can't be banned without very kind of the technical expertise, which I think the Pakistani state lacks, but which they are willing to kind of import from China and elsewhere. So, like, it can't be stopped, but they're trying very, very hard to stop it.
Finally, I'm going to ask you for three recommendations to understand this subject better. This could be a book or a movie or even another podcast. So, what would you recommend, Hurmat?
Yeah, for the Pashtun thing, there is a book called The Pashtun Question by Abu Bakr Siddiqui. It talks to maybe the war, maybe till 2010 and so on. But it is very good book to understand like the whole geography of Pashtun areas on this side of the border in Afghanistan. The second book which I would recommend is the book by Hussein Akhani called Between Mosque and Military. It is not about like the Baloch or the Pushtun, but it's about the state formation, how what ideology of the state is and how it sees itself. So that thing is very important in understanding how the state is kind of seeing all of these moments. Kind of for like a podcast and so on, I would recommend everyone to just go on to YouTube or like the Google and so on and search for any talk of Afrasiab Hatak. Afrasiab Hatak, he is a well-known Pashtun and intellectual political worker, and he has been like a mentor to hold this new generation of Pashtuns. So anything he says about like PTM or the Pashtun question and so on is very, very important.
Thank you for the recommendations and thank you for being on the podcast today, Hurmat.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you and having this opportunity to expand on the article.
That was Hurmat Ali Shah on the State of South Asia podcast. Himal has consistently brought you insight and commentary on developments in Pakistan, and you can find all of this on our website himalmag.com. You can listen to a previous episode of State of South Asia with the political and military analyst Aisha Siddiqa on growing disaffection in Pakistan for its military. Or read our contributor Salman Rafi Sheikh's piece on how elite capture is the real problem for Pakistan's economy. Become a paying patron of Himal to support the production of critical stories from Pakistan and from across South Asia. And don't forget to catch the Himal podcast next week, which will be an episode of the South Asia Review of Books. Shweta Srikantan will be speaking to investigative journalists Sabah Imtiaz and Tuba Masood about their book Society Girl, A Tale of Sex, Lies and Scandal, which is a retelling of a 5-decade-old murder mystery in Karachi. Follow the Himal South Asian podcast channel on your podcast app to find all our latest episodes, and you can share, rate, and review them. Sign up for our newsletters to keep up with Himal's work. This episode was edited by Ritika Chauhan. We'll be back soon with another in-depth conversation on the next episode of State of South Asia with me, Naintara Narayanan. Thank you for listening and see you then.